specific interest to me because of how he views and interprets and looks at the scripture. He looks at the scripture in such a way that it really speaks to the human condition of the people that are in the stories of Jesus. The stories of Jesus are about how Jesus interacted with people. I preached this text before, but I really want to kind of dissect, or what a mortician would say, I would want to do a forensic analysis. I want to take apart this particular text, and I want to kind of do an autopsy of this text and look at the three individuals, or the two individuals and the group of individuals that are mentioned in the text. This text is about Jesus, it's about a woman, and it is about the disciples. These two persons in one group in this text teach us some lessons, some real hard lessons, some deep lessons. It says something about Jesus, it says something about the woman, it says something about the disciples. It says something about the culture in which this woman lived in. This woman lived in a culture where she struggled to be accepted, to find place, meaning, and purpose. This woman lived in an environment that marginalized her. This woman lived in an environment where she had really no place to go, no place to worship, no place to find friendship, and no place to find a level of comfort, of peace. This woman was just really by herself, isolated and segregated because of mistakes she had made in life. She had made some mistakes, she had made some choices. She was marginalized by the women, she was used by the men, and the church culture had literally pushed her out and left her out. This woman was a woman that really couldn't find a place, meaning, and purpose. This woman struggled, and she had a hard time fitting in. She had a hard time finding her place among this culture in which she lived. She already had some disadvantages that she had to overcome and struggle with. She was a half breed. She was half Sumerian, and then she was half Jewish. And those two combinations already were disadvantages that she had. But this was ethnic. She was a part of that group of Samaritans that lived in the region of Sychar, where Jesus visited, and here in Samaria. She's part of that group of people who had to isolate and segregate themselves because they really couldn't find any belonging or connection, because the Samaritans were people who were half Syrian, half Jewish. The Syrians didn't really like them. The Jews really didn't like them. And so they found an enclave for them to exist in harmony among themselves. And so they really couldn't find any national identity. She had that going against her, that she was already half Syrian and half Jewish. And so they were isolated in this area. They could not find any connection among their half part of their ethnic background, which was Syrians, and couldn't find any connection with the other part of their ethnic background, which was Jewish. And so they were really just out there by themselves. Nobody really connected with them, and they couldn't find any connection. So she already had that going against her. But not only that, the woman had made some mistakes in life. She made some mistakes in life. She had some struggles in her life, personal struggles. I tell you, one of the things that I was really listening to, somebody was reading and writing and preaching on this particular text, was this. This woman was looking for love in all the wrong places. She just couldn't find love. She was looking for it. Her great, deepest and most intimate was the desire was to find love. And she tried to find love by having relationships with men. Some of the men she married, others she just courted. Some of them took her to the altar. Some of them deserted her. This woman was just looking for love. And she was just a woman who had vulnerabilities simply because she wanted to be loved. And that's what caused her to be in the situation. Is just she wanted to be loved. She just wanted to be loved by somebody. She just wanted to be loved by a man, which was what and how God created her. There wasn't nothing wrong with her wanting to be loved by men, wanting a man to love her to have some kind of connection. Nothing wrong with that. But in the process of that, she just made mistake after mistake. She just didn't know how to pick the right one. And so she had developed a reputation among the people where she lived, people where she associated with, the people where she possibly worked, people in her neighborhood, people in her civic groups. This woman had developed a real bad reputation. And because of her reputation, they treated her different than they treated the other women that were in this particular area where she lived. We know that because this woman was at the well at the 12th, at the 6th hour of the day, which is at 12 o'clock. Most of the women did not come to the well until the cool of the evening. And Dr. John MacArthur says that at the cool of the evening, when these women came to the well, it was not just a place to draw water, Brother Schaefer, but it was a place where the women could socialize. It was like at the laundromat, and as the women were there drawing water, they would discuss the activities, the rumor, and I love this, the gossip of the community. It's where the women met to talk, to discuss, to have a conversation, to indulge in each other's activities, what's going on in each other's life. These women were there. They were there not only to draw water, but to socialize. And they socialized to talk about their children, their husbands, their lives, their careers, and what was going on in their lives. And so it was not just a place to draw water, but it was a social gathering. It was a network of women who came to the well at the cool of the evening to have fellowship, to have communion. And my brothers and sisters, one of the one of the scholars that I read said that this woman probably wasn't going to be welcome in this particular social group. One of the reasons why she wasn't going to be welcome because probably she took one of them women's husbands, a couple of them women's husbands, because she had six different men that she had been with, and Jesus said she wasn't married to but one, and she was just with the other five. And Jesus said she was with a six, and that wasn't a husband. She was just shacking or cohabitating with him. And so she wasn't welcome among this group of women. She was marginalized. She wasn't really in the group and among these women. She didn't find a place. And listen, that's a pretty hard thing to accept. Now, it's one thing when your life is going well and and you can't find a social group in order to assimilate or to be a part of. But it's another thing when your life ain't going well, your life is falling apart, you struggling, and you got a reputation, and you can't find a support group. Y'all better listen to me, because some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Because sometimes when your life is chaotic and troublesome, you need a support group because sometimes that's therapy to help you deal with and to get through what you're going through. But this woman, even though she was struggling and she had all of these emotional and relationship issues and she felt marginalized, she felt segregated from this group of women who socialized at the well in the cool of the evening, they wouldn't even let her come and be a part of it. And so she had to come to the well at the hottest time of the day. She had to come by herself when nobody was there. And boy, if I had time, I'd go ahead and dissect this and do an autopsy of this, because let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, when people go through what they're going through, they need other people sometime to make it through it. We got to be careful as the church how we treat folk who go through things, whether they're mistakes that they make, their reputations that they have. We got to be careful how we treat people who go through difficult things in their life. We tend to want to isolate them and separate ourselves from them, especially people who go out in the community, they mess up, they get a reputation, and they have a bad reputation. If it is a reputation by their own decisions, by their own mistakes, we tend not to want to have anything to do with those people, and that's not what Christians do. Christians all not treat people any different because they make mistakes, because they have failures in life, because they have struggles in life. The Christian church ought to treat everybody right. We shouldn't be pointing people's faults and failures out. Jesus did not start this conversation with the woman by telling her her condition of the situation she was in with 6 different men, but he made a conversation with her, an easy conversation, by simply asking her for a drink of water. I tell you, I'm trying to teach this lesson to tell you how Jesus treated people. This woman was marginalized because of her ethnic background, because of who she was. She was half Syrian, half Jewish, and she already had that going against her. Now she is a woman with a reputation. And the women who met at the well in the cool of the evening, around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, would not even let her come and be a part of their group. This woman has a pretty rough life, a pretty tough existence. And boy, Steen, if I had time, I'd explain to you about the loneliness that this woman felt. This woman was lonely. Wouldn't you be lonely if the women wouldn't fellowship with you, the men used you, the church didn't want you, and you had to go draw water? It wasn't just about drawing water, it was about being a part of a social network of people. Because drawing water was a difficult job. When the women were there in their social circle, they could help each other draw water. When one got exhausted, another one would help to fill their jars. But this woman had to do all of this physical work by herself. Not only did she not have a social circle to help comfort her in her distressing situation, in her perilous situation, troublesome situation with this bad reputation, but not only that, she didn't have anybody to even help her when she got tired of drawing water. She by herself. I'm really trying to paint this picture because this woman is in the text in John chapter 4, but this woman ain't the only person like this woman. There are people in our world just like that today. You want to know some of the ills of our society, why some people do what they do, habits and hang-ups, and they get caught up in some of the things that they get caught up in, it's because they just like this woman at the well. This meeting at the well that this woman had with Jesus was not a chance encounter, but it was an intentional encounter. It was a divine appointment with Jesus Christ. Jesus knew who this woman was. And boy, I really don't have time to really get deep into that, but I'm trying to explain to you that this woman, how she was and the condition she was in, the situation she's in, is not an isolated situation. We live in a world where there are many people like this woman at the well. This woman was at the well by herself, not a part of any social group and not a part of any coordinated group where they worked together, where they talked together, discussed each other, supported each other. Because this woman had a reputation, she was not allowed to be a part of the women's social circle at the well in the cool of the evening. Boy, if I had one lesson I want to teach you, you got to be careful how you treat folk, especially folk who fall into a situation, whether it is intentional or whether it is by accident or incident, because you remember Galatians 1:6 says, if a brother be overtaken in this fault, ye who are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Simply this, it could happen to you. You might not fall today, but you could fall tomorrow. You might not find yourself in a perilous situation today, but just wait until tomorrow, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know what tomorrow will throw at you. You got to be careful how you treat people who fall, have struggles, who make mistakes in life. This woman found herself in this situation, isolated, separated, marginalized, not a part of any social circle. I want to introduce you to the woman. Now let me introduce you to Jesus. You know who Jesus is. But let me introduce you to him in the story. Jesus in this story is busy, very busy. His public ministry is at its highest, his visibility, his notoriety. He is very busy doing Jesus stuff. But Jesus takes time to go through Samaria. Matter of fact, the text says, he says, I have need to go to Samaria. Now, my brothers and sisters, that is really that's really telling that Jesus says, I had need. Now, the text says that there had just been a great baptism. Many had been baptized. None of them were baptized by Jesus, but they were baptized by Jesus' disciples, according to John chapter 4. And so Jesus was busy, but then Jesus took out the time to go through Samaria. He went to Samaria. He went to Samaria because there was a woman there. He did it intentionally. Jesus showed up where she was. He intentionally went there to meet this particular woman. Boy, if I had time, I really wanted to entitle this sermon something a little different, and that is when Jesus shows up. Because Jesus showed up in this woman's life at the right time. Don't Jesus got a way of showing up at the right time? Because Jesus could have showed up, Brother Schaefer, before the woman ever started marrying all these different men. He could have showed up before she got into these terrible situations. He could have showed up and she would have never gotten into some of these situations. But Jesus showed up when she was on her sixth husband, when her life was completely in chaos. Her life was a mess. That's when he showed up. My brothers and sisters, he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. Jesus knows when to show up and rescue us. And the timing of Jesus, this Jesus showed up when this woman's life was in the condition that it was in. And really what that says to us is this. Listen, your life can be tore up from the flow up in a complete mess, in chaos, in all kinds of confusion. But let me tell you, you ain't too bad for Jesus to show up to see about. Jesus will show up and see about you. I don't care how bad your life is in chaos, how much you've messed up, how extreme your failures and faults are. Jesus will show up. He ain't like us. You know, the only thing we want in the church now is good folk, rich folk, people with good reputations, people who are known and notable in the church community and in our communities. But my brothers and sisters, Jesus will get people when they're at their lowest. Jesus will find the lowest of people, people who got problems, people who have mistakes, people who have failures and faults. Jesus showed up in this woman's life at a time when she didn't think nobody cared. All of a sudden, Jesus showed up. Would nobody else show up in this woman's life? The women wouldn't let her be a part of a social circle. The men had used her. Her reputation was so bad, didn't nobody really want her. But Jesus showed up. He showed up. And if I had time, I'll explain to you this. He showed up and it was intentional. And then he sat down at the well because he was thirsty. But showing up is one thing. What he did next was extraordinary because of the culture in the time. First of all, he showed up and sat on the well, and then he started talking to a woman. That's extraordinary because in that day, it was not custom for any man to talk to a woman by herself outside of the presence of another man. That was extraordinary that Jesus would talk to a woman because men in that culture did not talk to women in public. But not only that, she was a Samaritan woman. Jesus was a Jewish man. Jewish men didn't talk to half-breeds. They discriminated against them because of their ethnic background. And so this woman had two things going against her. First of all, she was a woman. Secondly, she was a half-breed. But Jesus did not let either one of these prevent him from talking to this woman. You won't even talk to me, and I'm your pastor. Come to the same church every Sunday morning. Listen, but people shouldn't ever let their differences keep them from having a conversation, to having a casual engagement. What's wrong with having a conversation with people who are different, people who are not like you, people who other people say that you shouldn't talk to, you shouldn't engage? My brothers and sisters, nothing wrong with having a conversation with people that are different than you. Nothing wrong with having conversations with people who might not share the same values, the same politics, might not live in the same neighborhood as you. That's the problem in our culture today. We don't want to talk to folks that are different. But Jesus did not let the fact that this woman was a woman, did not let the fact that this woman was different ethnically, she was a half-breed, he did not let that prevent him from having a conversation with her. We at a bad place in our country and in our world that you don't like me because I'm black. You don't like me because I am of a different political party. You don't like me because I don't go to the same church you go to. I don't live in the same neighborhood you go to. You don't like me because there's some petty differences that you disagree with. You don't like me and we can't have dialogue and conversation. We are in trouble. But Jesus did not let that prevent him from talking to this woman. He showed up, but he talked to her. I mean, he had a conversation. And y'all got to quit this stuff, letting these petty things keep you from talking to each other. I mean, let me tell you something, my brothers and sisters. It don't make any difference what you think, what you believe. I don't care who you root for politically or in sports or entertainment. It don't make any difference to me. That's not what we have in common. What we do have in common is our love for Jesus Christ. You love the Lord, and so it really don't matter. We lay all of this other stuff aside for the sake of just getting along. There is so much discord in our country, in our politics, in the church, in our community. And you know what the Bible says. There's 7 things that God hates, and one of them is he who sows discord among the brethren. We got to be able to get along, sit down and have a conversation, and we cannot hold our prejudices against people, our biases against people, that we can't sit down and have a conversation. Jesus talked to this woman and did not let her gender keep him from talking. Did not let her ethnic background be a barrier for them to at least have a conversation. And it shocked the woman that Jesus would even be talking to her. Verse 9 says this. The woman says, wait a minute. I'm a Samaritan. You a Jew. How are you talking to me? Let me tell you something. I live in a very diverse neighborhood. And listen, I don't like all my neighbors. But what they got to do with anything? They are my neighbors. They are my neighbors, and I treat my neighbors with respect. There is a gay couple that lives right across the street from me in the neighborhood where I live, and they say that they are married. That they are married. I don't believe that they are married because I think that, and I believe that biblical marriage is between a man and a woman. Not a woman and a woman, but do I mistreat my neighbors because they live across the street from me doing something that I don't agree with, and religiously and morally I don't agree with? No, I don't mistreat my neighbors. They're still my neighbors. We have a conversation, we talk, we engage each other. We got each other's phone numbers in case something happens at either one of our houses. We can get in contact with each other because, listen, that difference cannot keep me from being neighborly to my neighbor. I don't agree with them, and I wouldn't celebrate anything that they're doing, but guess what? They're still my neighbors. We got to realize that we live in a diverse world with different people. We don't agree with everything that they do, but we still got to respect their common humanity. Do I have any witnesses in here? We got to respect people, have a right to choose to do whatever they want to do, and we don't mistreat them because we don't agree with what they choose. We still talk about things that happen in our world. Our favorite sports team. They invite me over to barbecue. I invite them over to barbecue because they still are people. But you're not going to win people by pointing out their differences and always bringing up your disagreements. I'm just preaching this morning in light of the kind of world we live in where we can't even have a conversation with people. A whole lot of things I don't like, but I'm not going to mistreat people because I don't like what they do. Because we don't agree. And Jesus did not allow him. And the woman was astonished that Jesus would even be talking with her. But she said this, for the Jews do not have an association with the Samaritan. That is so sad. Now, see, I don't know. See, y'all could be too black for me. Because listen, I can tell you what, black folk ain't going nowhere and white folk ain't either. They ain't going nowhere on your job, in your community. They ain't going nowhere in government. And so you might as well, we ought to get along. I mean, you keep trying to act like you so pro-black that you want all black folk. Now listen, you go, if the American government give you a carve out a state and say, we're going to give it to black folk and only black folk can live there, listen, go on, I ain't coming. Listen, I want to be where there's a diverse group of people. Because listen, heaven ain't going to be all black. Heaven going to have all kinds of tribe and nation and people. And we might as well get used to it down here because that's the way it's going to be up there. I'm trying to tell you, we got to quit. Racism is a nasty, ugly stain on our nation. And Christians ain't got no business being a part of that. But we got to love all people. For it said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever. I'm telling you, it ain't no black church. It ain't no white church. It's just one church. It ain't no black heaven and a white heaven. It's just one heaven. And so Jesus said to this woman, and I'm almost closing, if you knew who it was you was talking to. Now, my brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. This is really important in the text. She didn't know who she was talking to. She had no idea she was talking to Jesus. Jesus knew who he was talking to, but she did not know that she was literally talking to Jesus. But Jesus says, if you knew who it was you were talking to, you would tell him to give you a drink. And I tell you, the drink that he gives you, he's talking about himself, you will never thirst again. You know how the woman interpreted what Jesus said? She interpreted Jesus saying, if you let me give you this water, you'll never have to come to this well again. Because she didn't enjoy coming to the well. She didn't enjoy coming to the well because she had to come by herself. She didn't enjoy coming to the well because it was intense physical labor. That's what she thought he was talking about. You won't ever have to come to this well. But Jesus was talking about something deeper than that. Because Jesus knew that it was more than physical water that she needed. It was a spiritual water that she needed because she had a longing of an unsatisfied soul. The woman said, you have nothing to draw with. The well is deep. And Jesus says, listen, don't worry about all that. I got this. And so this woman says, give me this water to where I won't thirst. And you see it in verse 15, keep coming to this well to draw water. And then Jesus shifts the conversation to really talk about her life, her condition. Many scholars ponder over why Jesus mentioned this, because he really touched a nerve. He really spoke to why she was where she was. Man, I tell you, you wouldn't be so judgmental if you knew why people were where they was. You don't know how I know somebody ended up a drug dealer or a drug addict or in the sinful condition that they're in. And you gotta sometimes look at the why and instead of judging the what, because you don't know how people arrive to the place where they arrive. That's why you got to be careful. You judge and you pass judgment, but you really don't know the why. You know, I've been a pastor for almost 40 years and I've had pastoral counseling, and people love to judge people when they get caught up in a situation or a situation get caught up in them and they pass a judgment, but the Sister Calvert, they never ask why. Why and how a person got caught up in the situation. Now, Jesus is going to explain to her why she desires this living water, that she never thirsts no more. Well, Jesus is going to get to the crust of the problem, the foundation of the problem, the root of the problem. This woman longed for something different. And Jesus said to her, go get your husband and come back. Because you don't know why the woman was at the well by herself at 12 o'clock. It's because of her mistakes, her moral failures, her longing to be loved, to find meaning and purpose in relationship and companionship. So Jesus addressed that issue. He really wanted the woman to know, I know why you're here. Let me tell you this. I wanted to really put this point out here, and I'm just teaching this morning. Let me tell you, Jesus knows what don't nobody else know. I tell you, other folk might not know why you are who you are and do what it is you do, but the Lord knows. She was shocked that Jesus knew that she had 6 husbands. He knew what didn't nobody else knew that she knew. Let me tell you, Jesus knows what you're going through. Jesus knows what you've been through. Jesus knows just where you are, just what you're going through. My brothers and sisters, if people really knew your story before you ever made it here this morning, what you went through just to get here, what you've been through in your life, they would be shocked that you're still standing today. Jesus knew what nobody else knew if they just met this woman for the first time. And Jesus says, go get your husband. Now, verse 17, one scholar says this speaks to this woman's shame, embarrassment, and it really speaks to her admitting her failure. She says, I have no husband. Jesus said, you got that right. So shame and so feeling so defeated in life. She said, Jesus, you're right. So much you could read into that particular text, the woman's response, because I don't want you to look over the emotional trauma, the emotional response, the emotional disappointment that this woman felt to answer a question, because she could not even accept her own situation. She knew that the 6th husband was a failure like the other 5. She said, he ain't worth a quarter either. I'm trying to just clean it up so I don't give y'all women too much to cheer about. She said, I had 5 that wasn't no good, and the 6th one I got ain't no good. That's literally what she was saying. He ain't much of a husband either. 5 disappointed me, and the 6th one is doing the same thing that the last 5 did. He ain't much of a man. He ain't shown me much character. He ain't been a stand-up guy. He's not been what I expected him to be and what he told me to be. She admitted her failure, her disappointment. I ain't got no husband. Greg Hammock says you got to really put some emotion in that, because she probably said to Jesus, she said it like this, I ain't got no husband. In utter frustration, because she knew the one she had wasn't worth a quarter. Disappointed again, yet trying. But I can give you this that most modern women don't do, Rashida, and I know y'all gonna get mad at me. One thing you can give this woman credit for, when she couldn't make one man work, she kept on trying. She didn't throw in the towel like most modern women say, I'm done. I'm over it. She didn't say, I'm done with men like most modern women. I'm done with men. She stayed in the game, And she kept trying, and she kept trying, and she kept 6 times. We know she got back in the game, knocked down, and got back up 6 times. So the 6th time, we got to give her credit for that. That she didn't give up. So she said, I ain't got one. Jesus said, you got that right. You have no husband. Matter of fact, you done had 5, and the one you got now, it's not yours. Now, I ain't gonna read too much into this, Sister Jefferson, but one scholar said it's not yours literally meant he could have been somebody else's that she took. Not that he was a single man and not attached to somebody. The implication of the text says that he was somebody else's, and now the one you got ain't yours. And then the woman said to Jesus, I see you a prophet because you know some stuff I ain't even told you. Because I tell you, Jesus knows some stuff about you that don't nobody know. I tell you, the Lord knows. But see, this is the thing about Jesus is this: is He knows what He knows, but He doesn't use it against you. He ain't like us. When we know what we know about people that's not good and that's hurtful, we'll use it against them. But Jesus wasn't saying this to use it against them, but to let the woman know that He knew the situation she was in. The depth of her pain, the depth of her loneliness, the reason for her loneliness, the reason for her isolation. Jesus was telling her, I know what you're going through. I know what you're being through. I know what you're in. The woman started talking about wishing. And Jesus said, the time is going to come. And I'm closing. That you got to get right with God. And it ain't about where you worship, it's that you worship. Because God is a spirit, and you must worship Him in spirit and truth. And verse 25, I'm almost closing. This woman said, man, we've been looking for a Messiah like this. That's what he said. We've been looking for. And she said, when he comes, he going to explain everything to us. We've been looking for Jesus. We've been looking for Jesus. Been looking for Jesus. She said, us has been looking for Jesus. And we've been looking for a Messiah. We've been waiting for him to come. But what she didn't realize is she didn't have to wait no more. Jesus showed up. Jesus met her at the well, at this meeting at the well. And Jesus says in verse 26, I, the one you speak, I'm he. Then I'm closing. I got to close with verse 27 because now see, this is the church. Verse 27 describes the church. Because look what the text says. The disciples rejoined Jesus. And when they returned, they were surprised he was talking to the woman. They were surprised he was talking to the woman. You know why? Because they wouldn't have talked to her. They wouldn't have had nothing to do with it. They were surprised that Jesus was doing what they wouldn't do. And so they're looking at Jesus crazy because he's talking to this woman because they wouldn't have talked to this woman. Don't let people make you mistreat people because they don't like them. Don't you let people make you mistreat people because they can't get along with them. Don't let people make you mistreat people because they might not accept them. Accept all people. These disciples came back, and they were surprised that Jesus was even talking to this woman. But no one asked him. They wanted to. Why are you talking to her? That's the position of the church today. You want to know why churches are struggling? There are some churches accept anybody and anything. Them churches I ain't talking about. But then there are some churches that need to accept people just the way they are and how they are. Because it ain't the job of the church to change them. That's Jesus' job. But we need to open the doors of the church and accept people and be open to people and let people come to Jesus just as they are. And if they don't change, that's on Jesus. But we need to open up our churches and let people come and stop letting them feel marginalized and stop bringing so much judgment, stop criticizing them for their struggles and the things that they do. My brothers and sisters, we all got struggles. We might not verbalize them, people might not know about it, but we all have struggles. All of us struggling with something right now. All of us are tempted to do something right now that we shouldn't do. We all got struggles. And the church got to be careful how we treat people with struggles. The disciples didn't even want Jesus talking to this woman, surprised that he was talking with her. But no one asked, what do you want? They was talking to the woman. Or why are you talking to her? Nobody had enough courage to ask the woman, what you want? I asked Jesus, what are you talking to her for? They didn't want to talk to Jesus. They wanted to have the courage to talk to the woman. If they would have had the courage to talk to the woman, she would have told them what she told the folk when she went back to the city of Samaria. If they would have talked to Jesus and asked him, he would have told them. And then the woman left with her water jar, and I'm going on. And in the meantime, verse 31, and I'm closing, the disciples had went in town to get bread. And the disciples urged him to eat something. And Jesus wasn't really interested in eating because Jesus had turned a woman with a reputation into an evangelist, a disciple. And they said to Jesus, you need to eat something. But Jesus said, I've eaten food that you don't know nothing about, I'll tell you. And then the disciples said to each other, because somebody else have brought him, so they worried about the wrong thing. Jesus worried about a soul, they worried about food. They worried about something physical, and Jesus is worried about this woman's eternal salvation. This woman's soul. Boy, if I had time, I'd explain to you. Jesus had his focus on this woman, and they worried about food, but Jesus worried about this woman's eternal salvation, this woman's soul, this woman's salvation. You know, the church can get bogged down, worried about a whole lot of things that really don't mean anything. We get bogged down in things that really don't mean anything. We so caught up in the crowd, the size of the church, the music in the church, and we so caught up with who comes to our church and all these things, but we don't worry about people. We're in the business of saving lost souls. We ain't worried about all this other stuff. Jesus said that if you seek first the kingdom of heaven, all this other stuff will be added to you. Let Jesus worry about some things. We worry about people getting the message of salvation, the good news to lost men and women. Tell them about Jesus. That's why the church is ineffective, because we focus on the wrong thing. We worried about things that are physical, things that are material, but we forget that there are people who are lost. Jesus says, I came to seek and to save that which is lost. We forgot about lost people today. We worried about everything else. Worried about the reputation of our church, the size of our church, and who comes to our church, the number of people, members of our church. Worried about people. How about having a desire and an affection for people? Every head bowed and every eye closed. I'm telling you, the church is in such a chaotic place. We got our attention focused on everything. Politics is important, but we ain't in the business of politics. Money, health, wealth, and prosperity is important, but we ain't in that business. We're in the business of preaching the good news and the salvation to the lost. Lost people, that's the business we're in, to tell people about Jesus Christ. My soul is heavy because I know there are people who come to church, they seek salvation, they come to the church, they trying to find and start a new path in life, but we so hard, critical, and judgmental that people are turned off, not turned off about Jesus but turned off because they see us acting and treating them the way Jesus would have never treated them. Jesus didn't let his differences or the cultural prejudices keep him from talking to this woman. We got to sit down and have a conversation with each other. Jesus can fix it. Jesus can solve some of the problems we have in our culture.